on Nova Legends podcast, I have AU legend Gordon Austin, a guy I grew up admiring, a great point guard in the early '80s for AU. Now he does the color commentary for the AU broadcast on ESPN Plus or three, and
You got it.
has also and also has an insurance agency in Annandale. Gordon, great to meet you. Thanks for doing this.
Appreciate it, Julian. And I think it's wonderful what you're doing, promoting Northern Virginia basketball.
Yeah, well, thanks for saying that. I guess I'm kind of new media, even though I'm an old guy, and I guess you'd still be considered old media. You're still going to the games and you're
Yeah.
doing the play-by-play like we grew up listening to.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, the last 3 years I've done the American U broadcast. You're doing the color ESPN Plus with Dan Lang, and I've enjoyed it very much, and I'm glad to be back involved.
Yeah, you do a great job. You can tell that you have a bias.
Hmm.
You have, just kidding, but you give a lot
No,
of great
that's fun.
information.
That's fun.
Yeah, you give a lot of great information on the game, so it's great listening to you. My good friend Jason Coleman's son, Gibraltar Coleman's on the
Yeah.
team. He hasn't been able to play much due to injuries,
Hmm.
and also, of course, Greg Jones is a guy I know him very well. But first of all, Gordon, let me introduce you again. You're I guess you're a class of '83 at American.
Correct.
You're the all-time leader in assists for AU,
Hmm.
second in steals. You were fourth nationally in assists in your senior season. One of your probably your claim to fame. One of your claim to fame is you led AU over an upset over a very young Hoya team that would eventually win a national championship. You got them when they were young, and you were kind of being a bully there, Gordon. But huge game. I remember that game. It was
Hmm.
amazing. You were eighth round draft pick in the NBA back when they had eight rounds, and may have had 10.
Hmm.
Uh, Played for the great Gary Williams, and as I mentioned early, you've run an insurance agency in
Hmm.
Northern Virginia for many years. Did I get most of that right, Gordon?
You sure did. You're
Yeah.
spot on.
Uh,
And just real quick, you mentioned Greg Jones. I mean, he's done remarkably well from his freshman to his sophomore year. He'd probably be the most improved player in the Patriot League this year.
it's amazing because he had a great junior year at
Hmm.
Hayfield, and he had some injuries his senior year. Didn't play quite as well, and then his freshman year he contributed right away defensively. But this year, I think he's shooting like 42% from the 3-point land, leads the team, and I think he's
Yeah,
tied for first in foul throws, and he's a
yeah, he is
hustler.
X factor for AU for sure. I mean, he's now basically their second or third best player on the floor, and he can defend anybody.
Yeah,
And if there's a ball going up and you want somebody to get the rebound and get a loose ball, you want Greg Jones getting it for you.
yeah.
So, and he's very improved in all aspects of the game.
Well, Gordon, did you see young players do this when you played?
Hmm.
Nowadays, it's getting so tough with the
Right.
portal and the and NIL for young players to get any kind of opportunities. So
Hmm.
Greg is kind of an anomaly, really, and especially because he went to a public school, which is also very unique for players who contribute right away. Do you see less opportunities now for young players than when you played?
I think so. And I think the beauty of the Patriot League is you're going to see like it makes my job easier because most players return, right? There's not a whole lot of NIL, there's not a whole lot of portal movement. So I know other rosters from year to year, and the guys are familiar with each other. And it's a balanced schedule. I mean, there's 10 teams, everybody plays each other twice. And it's a nice camaraderie within the league, and every game is hard fought and it's enjoyable. And again, here's a guy, Greg Jones, who just keeps improving each year. And he's not leaving AU, don't get me wrong. But I mean, if I'm a mid-major, that's what they should be doing. They should be looking at Patriot League players and other conference players just to see.
Yeah, I would think they should be looking at Patriot, and I'm sure the big four or whatever are going to be looking at
Yeah,
the Patriot players that do well. So it's one of those stepping stones. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
Simpkins did a great job of keeping Matt Rogers and all his players. So that
yeah,
whatever he's doing there, he's building
yeah.
a culture where folks they want to
Oh
be
yeah,
part of it because that's going to be the challenge in the future. Is when your players do well early, then other teams are other schools are going to want to come in and grab them.
absolutely. And you got a balance of making sure you play your players, your young players, because you don't want them getting frustrated. And Greg Jones has done it's like a talk. He's always been a good defender, but now his offensive game is really come on. And then Coach Dwayne Simpkins, he's playing 11 guys in the first half. You don't see that much in college basketball these days. And so everybody's a part of the action. They're 12-5, tied for first in the conference. Second half comes around. Those guys have played in the first half already, and they're ready to go.
Yeah. Well, Gordon, do you like where and we'll get to more of the AAU team later.
Uh-huh.
Do you like where basketball is now? I went to the Maryland game last night, and that was an old school game. That was a
Right.
game Gordon Austin could have played.
Yes.
It was in the 40s and 50s.
Hmm.
Just a hard knuckle basketball game.
Hmm.
But that's the exception. Basketball now. I was sitting next to a guy who's Alabama guy. He says they shoot within 4 seconds and they want nothing but
Right.
3-pointers and in the lane. Do you like the college basketball game now, the way it's actually played?
I don't like the Maryland game last night. I just got done. I'm part of a DC basketball coaches podcast.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great podcast.
With Gary Williams, Chris Knoche, Jimmy Patsos at Tapscott. We just had one this morning, and they were all. Gary was at the Maryland game last night. Of course, Chris was there, and they were talking about the game and how Izzo wears you down. Right? I mean, it's a physical. Izzo doesn't probably has 0 NBA players, but he's also a guy who's playing 10 guys, and he's going to physically wear you down. And that's kind of old school basketball. I mean, the guys on the floor for Michigan State are happy to be on the floor, right? They're not expecting anything else but getting playing time and doing their best for their coach. And like they said, Maryland was down most of that game, and it was mentally tough to get back in it, which they did. So it was. AU had a game last night and lost to Navy. Otherwise, I would have been on that game.
Yeah, it's a tough one. But
Yeah.
yeah, you know that Maryland, that Michigan State team is not unlike the Georgetown teams before Ewing got there. They had a bunch of 6'7", 6'8" athletes. They were physical.
Mm-hmm.
They have one or two guys that can shoot, like a Duran or a John Bebe Duran or Eric Floyd.
Ed Spriggs was their big guy, right? Banging around.
Exactly. Ed Spriggs. They had John. What were some of the other guys' names? Eric. God, it's been a while.
Eric Smith, maybe?
Eric Smith.
Yes.
Eric Smith. You know, they just had a lot of really hard-nosed.
My freshman year, that was year before Ewing got there, right?
Mhm.
A year or two before. But John Bebe Doran just took me in the post and just posted me up. And I was like, nothing I could do but foul. He was so strong. It made me realize, if I'm going to play Division I basketball, I better hit the gym. And I did that over that summer. But John Bebe Doran was the reason why. And Gene Smith was one tough defender, too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Gene Smith was a great defender.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some more. There was a Jones. I'm blanking on those guys.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. They were good.
But what do you think of those guys? You were a big figure in the DC area.
Mm-hmm.
And those Georgetown players they're household names. When I went to the Maryland game last night, I had to look up the roster. I knew Angel Reese's brother, but I had to remind myself of the players' names. I didn't know any of the Michigan State players. I had to learn them, and I was again surprised none of them shoot 3-pointers, which I couldn't believe when I was looking at the stats. But you guys were celebrities in town. What explain? It seems like the players today would be more celebrities than you were because they have social media, they have accounts. But we all knew you guys, and you were coached by absolute icons.
Yes.
I mean, Lefty Drizel, John Thompson, Gary Williams, Joe Harrington. Icons were coaching. I couldn't even name all the coaches in the DC area, even though I know they're good coaches. And if you could remind me, and I know who they are.
Well, there's too much things for you to do right now, right? I mean, there's games on. Every game is on TV all over. You don't have to leave your couch, your chair to watch games. Back in those days, you went to Fort Myers to watch AU play. You went to McDonough to watch Georgetown play. Cap Center, Cole Fieldhouse. I mean, you were there and you were out and about. Today, you know Utah State better as well as George Mason.
Yeah. So you don't think it's anything like that we worship the big coaches more? You think it's more a function? We're just more distracted today.
And it is. I mean, my friends are growing up my age, right? I'm early 60s. They barely watch college basketball now. They watch it because maybe they're betting on it, right? They see games. I mean, seriously. But otherwise, they'll pick it up March, right? And that's because they got a bracket working. But back in our day growing up, they knew all the players. Players played 4 years. They knew all the UNLV players. They knew the Duke players. They knew UNC players. They related to people. You can't relate to any teams right now. Maryland has a whole new roster each year, right? I mean, how are you gonna get involved with that unless you are an alumni and going to games? And I think that's really hurt college basketball.
It does. I just thought of Craig Big Sky Shelton, by the way.
Yes, Craig Shelton.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's where do you think that the level of competition is now? If I would have asked you that 5 or 10 years ago, you would have told me because of one and done, there's no comparison. College basketball is nowhere near as good as it was in the 80s when you played, not even close. But now things are changing a little bit in that you have older players, players are being incentivized to
Mhm.
stay longer because of all the European players that are in the NBA. There's no
Mhm.
guarantee that guys like Armando Bacot are going to
Yep.
make more money in the NBA than they're going to make at UNC, which he would have surely made more money in the NBA, yeah,
Yeah.
40
At
years
one
ago.
point, yes.
So where do you think the competition level is now compared to where it was 10 and 20, 30, 40 years ago?
Well, there's so much parity now, right? Just because teams are moving, I mean, players are moving from team to team. And, we talk about this on our podcast often. You're now finding out if coaches can coach because it used to be if you had the best players, you would win, right? That's not the case anymore. It's level, there's parity, and now coaches have to coach. And I like it.
Yeah. Gordon, how did you find American University? What kind of kid? When I
Yeah.
was growing up, and probably right before you got there, they had Kermit Washington. He was kind of like the flagship player. And AU was very much in the conversation in DC basketball. This is before Georgetown had completely taken off.
Mhm.
Georgetown had completely taken off. George
Mhm.
Washington was still very good. Maryland had reached the top of college basketball.
Mhm.
But by then, what kind of kids would come to AU and play?
Gary Williams did a wonderful, obviously I went to American U because Gary Williams, right? Gary Williams did a wonderful job recruiting me. I went to Linden High School, New Jersey. We were a very good team. We lost the state finals to Camden, and Gary was influencing me to go to American. I wanted to play for him. There was something about him. I mean, if you were a player for Gary Williams, you bought it. You were all in. So and again, back then, I'm a 5'11" point guard, right? In New Jersey, and there's not the scouting services that there are now. They're not the game films. You had to be seen. I was lucky to be first team All State, which helped, right? So I had offers from Richmond, St. Joe's, and University of St. Louis, but nothing tremendous. But Gary got me to AU. I fell in love with the campus. It was 4 hours from home, and it just worked for me. And then I again grew into the DC basketball scene. I knew nothing about it until I arrived on campus and realized what good teams and level of play. I mean, Maryland, how about good? They were Buck Williams, Albert King. Those were good
Yeah.
teams.
Everybody was great. Just can imagine where you would have been in life if you would have gone to St. Joe's. I'm sure you would have done great, but it's funny
Yeah,
those little decision points that you
yeah.
make. Who did you play
I
for?
always wanted to go to Rutgers, because when I was growing up, Rutgers went to the Final Four, but they recruited a point guard out of Mackin High School here in DC, so that was not even an option for me.
What was his name? The guy from Mackin.
I think Kenny Payne, maybe.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think he ever panned out there. He never really played too much at
Right.
Rutgers, but he was, Tom Young was the coach at Rutgers back then, and he recruited him, and they signed him early after his junior year.
Yeah. Who did you play for at Linden? And what kind of effect did he have on your life?
It was wonderful. The guy's name was Jerry Ambriaco, still in touch with my life today. And we had Aaron Howard, who went to Villanova, Darrell Devereux went to Seton Hall, and
Wow.
Calvin Duncan went to VCU.
Yeah.
So they were all on my high school team. So it was wonderful years, just like my time at American U.
How in the world did all those great players end up in London? Did you guys have a reputation of being really good and players would move there, or did it just
No, back
luck of
then
the
nobody moved there. I mean, there was no moving around. It was legit. You grew up in Linden, and that was it. It was always a kind of a basketball town.
Yeah. Did you guys ever play in New York City? Did you go into Manhattan and play pickup at Rucker? Did you play league? Did you play league games against New York, well, not leagues, but
Right.
regular season games against New York City teams?
We did not. Back then, you kind of played within your own county, and then you went one or two games. And we played against St. Anthony's all the time with Bobby Hurley, senior coaching them. And that was always a treat. They were always legit and very tough to play. I played in a bunch of all-star games where we'd play Connecticut and New York teams. Tony Red Bruin was a good player
Yeah.
back then. And yeah, it was good. East Coast basketball was tough.
Yeah. I think Tony Red Bruin might have been there the day that John Thompson turned the lights off at Manly.
Yes, he
Yeah.
was.
He loved
Yeah,
to
yeah.
rub the salt in
You brought up earlier about when we beat Georgetown back in '82, and that was I think Ewing was a sophomore that year, but we played in the summer leagues, right? Not even summer leagues, just summer basketball. All those guys used to come to AAU and had the Cassell Center, and we used to play against them in the gym, and it was always pickup. You don't see that today, right? Where you win, you stay on the floor, you lose, you're out, and so we didn't really view them as anybody different than us, right? So we always went in there with the attitude of we can just beat them easily, not easily, but we could play with them. And then we got lucky, and it was Ewing against Sampson. They were number 1 against number 2, 3 days before we played Georgetown. And so they had a little letdown. They had a letdown. Sampson beat Ewing. Virginia won that game, and then we got them at the capstone.
Yes. So, what did you think? By the way, I was just thinking they don't play pickup now. They go to their trainer and get some shots up now. That's
correct. They don't play 5-on-5 anymore. Even preseason.
Exactly. I always talk about getting shots up. That's all I talk about.
Get better.
Yeah. Real quick with Ewing, he was such a intimidating figure. He was media shy. So, and he had an incredible spotlight on him. Patrick is this lovable guy now. We love him. He's hard not to love. He's got this great personality. He has this great smile. But back then, we feared him. I mean, I was a Georgetown fan, but scary guy. What did you make of Ewing when you first met him?
I think that's the same thing. It was John Thompson, right? Yeah. He kind of controlled all those guys in a certain way, in a good way, right? So you didn't really ever hear Patrick talk much, right? He was never, he was feared, right? I mean, I can remember at AU after it was springtime, we'd have concerts coming into the amphitheater, and like the Georgetown guys would come and just sit down there. It was like great seeing them, just like out of a basketball. They're out there on their own.
Would you talk to them? Would you guys interact?
I went over there. I might have had a few beers in me, but I went over there and said hello to them a little bit. Yeah, they were interactive, and it was wonderful. Right. But I think you can say that also about John Thompson. What a great man he was. But he was all close knit until after he got done coaching, right? And then he became on the radio, and you could see really his personality come out.
Yeah, that's right. John Thompson was the whole world was against John Thompson.
Yes. And he wanted it that way, though, right? It was control, right? It was us against the world mentality.
Yeah.
Everybody had Georgetown gear back then, right? I mean, that was a huge cult.
Yeah, that's right. It was iconic. It was an iconic kid. Now, we all know that Lefty and Thompson had a huge falling out. And I think it was language someone used. I forgot how it started, but it was a falling out. How did Gary Williams and John Thompson get along? Did John Thompson respect Gary Williams as a peer? Because everyone knew he was a great coach.
Yeah. They both respect each other to a high level. I think it's a shame they never got to play against each other regularly, right? That kind of, who said, she said, I guess that somebody owed somebody a game, then it never happened, right? Enough to where that would have been a nice rivalry to have seen.
Yeah, we didn't have like a big five in DC like they had in Philly. We had a little bit of that in the 70s, but
we'll never have it now because again, the scheduling wise, Big Ten has too many teams, right? So it's hard. You got to allocate so many to your schedule, and so it's impossible to fit other games in. They want to get a couple wins under the belt, then they're going to tournaments. It's very hard to pull off today.
Yeah. Now with Gary Williams. Gary Williams is known for he's the personality. He's not afraid to yell at his players. He's larger than life personality in the DC area. Did you know that he was going to go somewhere and be very special, win a national title? Did you have any inclination that was possible when you played for him?
Yeah, and it's interesting because my first year as a freshman, I didn't play much, but we were 500, right? And it was Gary's second year. And I think his first year, he was under 500. So he's been 2 years in, and he's only 500 coach at American. But he had that in him. And then my sophomore year, we went 24-6. Then we went 21-9. And then he went off to BC and then to Ohio State and to Maryland and never looked back. But yeah, I could see it. He knew, besides his passion for the game, and like he loved practice, he knew also who to pick on and who not to pick on. So he was very good about that. But when ball was thrown up and it was game time, he was all for you. I mean, you knew he was sweating and everything was going your way, and it was perfect. My freshman year, I'm first team All-State, coming to American. I think I'm going to play. I mean, this is it. I mean, how good is American? And he didn't play me as much as I wanted. But when I was on the bench, he'd come over and crouch next to me and just like vehemently tell me what was wrong that was going on the floor, right? And I'm like, well, God, put me in. I'm ready to go. I mean, what? And later on in life, I think he did that to his assistant coaches. I think the way times changes, he can't do that to players any longer. But it really helped me aware when I went to the game. I knew exactly what was going to happen. And then later on, I'd call a play before he called it. I mean, we had that sync together.
Yeah, he was famous for yelling at anyone near him, and not just him. That's a funny trait of college basketball. The guys who are getting playing time are the ones
Yeah.
we should yell at, and they'll yell at anyone that's even
Yeah.
close to them on the bench.
They clearly helped me, though. They helped me with him. Yeah, it was good. It's kind of a shame that he has to, now you have to do that today. You can't really, get in players' faces as much because it's so, exposure's there. Too much.
Was he the kind of coach that gave you confidence, or is he the kind of coach just kind of beating you up to see how tough you are?
Confidence. But you could say both. I mean, you were tough. You had to be tough to play for Gary. I mean, the best part about that thing was we pressed the whole game. You don't see that too much now. I mean, that Nolan Richardson teams back in Arkansas used to do that. I mean, very few teams do that. I mean, anytime we scored, it was a full court press. Mm-hmm. And today's game, you got timeouts every 4 minutes, right? Back then, that wasn't the case, but we were into it. We were in shape, and it was a fun way to play.
Yeah. Well, as you watch Gary Williams go from a great coach at a local program to one of the top coaches in college basketball, did he change a lot as a coach, or was he always the same coach, or did you see him develop in ways from his success and from all the experience that he was getting?
I mean, he definitely got experience along the way, but he didn't change. I mean, his BC teams full court press, his Ohio State teams did, and his Maryland teams did. I mean, he did a wonderful job of staying true to Gary Williams. I mean, he call it a flex offense where you screen, roll, pick back. I mean, he ran that, right? And people couldn't stop it. Then he did variations off it where he'd have a screen down for a three. And some teams do it today, and Auburn does it occasionally, which I love seeing, which is different. Yeah. But I think that we talked earlier, I'm not sure 3-point line has helped the game, right? I mean, It's like AU 2 nights against Boston U last week, they shoot 2 for 21 from the 3-point line, and somehow win the game. Last night they lose to Navy, and they're 6 for 31. It's just shooters got to shoot, and that's the style that it is in today's game. But you look at Michigan State; they're not taking threes, right? They might have taken 10 last night.
Yeah, I think Navy swept them this year because I think Navy beat them.
They did.
That's great.
Yeah, and that's Patriot League basketball. I mean, literally, teams are pretty equal. I think AU and Bucknell, they're 1 and 2. I think they have the best talent this year. But I mean, and also the beauty of the Patriot League, if you're the 1 seed, the higher seed gets home court. So it's just nice. So it's important, right? So and for conference, so AU will open up next Thursday either as the 1 or 2 seed.
Yeah, and that's better than a double bye. The home court is to me. This double bye stuff is to me.
Well, and some of these conferences, there's nobody in the stands either. At least if you're playing the games at home, people are there.
No, exactly right. Gordon, we're talking about the 3-point line. One of the things that you played with, basketball was a game of will. If you watch the old Boston Celtics Lakers games from the 80s, who wanted it? Who really wanted it? And you could. I like to go to high school state tournaments and just watch them. And I'd watch the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. And I could just tell by, after a couple games or even midway through a game, which team really wanted it. Those days are gone because with the 3-point line, the game is completely different. It's not the game of wills it used to be. You just mentioned that AU had a poor shooting night. I can see. You guys upset Georgetown, but if Georgetown was really thinking about AU, they would have jammed the ball down your throat, and they would have really made life tough on you because it was that kind of game back then. It was an absolute game, but the game is not like that anymore.
Correct, and you're spot on. And think about college and NBA right now, right? They always throw 2 players in the deep corner, right? Because that's the easiest 3 to hit. So all you're doing is a high pick and roll and variations off of that. And so, I mean, it's no longer running an offense that you want to run because you're setting up the 3. Yeah.
Do you think they should move the 3-point line out some?
I mean, they're still going to launch them. I would love to see the go from where the old coach's box was across to the other side and have no threes from the corner.
Oh, interesting.
Just have it up top. So you can't just camp out in the corner. You can, but it's only going to be a 2 if you want to take that. Now guys will move in a little bit.
Right.
But I don't like it extended all the way to the baseline.
No, I think I've been hearing more and more about that. So let's go back to your playing days at American. I want to talk about a guy who was a scoring machine when you first got there, Boo Bowers.
Yes.
This was a guy that was a big name in DC. I think I don't know if he led the nation in scoring, but he had some crazy, like 26,
Yeah,
27 a game.
he was the returning nation leading scorer when he went into his senior year.
That's what it was. Yeah.
And
What was
he was in the same county as I grew up in. He was from Westfield, and I grew up in Linden, so we were the same county together back then.
okay? What was he like? And tell us a little bit about Boo. He was a legendary figure in DC back then.
Yeah, he could score at will. He was lefty, but what Boo could do, besides being strong, he lifted weights way back when nobody else did. He could really raise up on his jump shot. You didn't see that too much. So Boo could just get off his feet, jump up with the left hand, and knock down jumpers from all over. And he was just a legit scorer.
And then he had some injury problems late in his career at American.
His senior year, he went down probably like 6 games in, tore up his knee. And back then, when you had a knee, it wasn't, you were big brace and you were in trouble. Yeah. So he missed most of our senior year, his senior year, my sophomore year, when we started really taking off. That was the year we went up 24-6. He made it back for the NIT game at Toledo, but he was never the same player since.
Yeah. Yeah. What was our friend Chris Knoche like? Now, Chris went to Woodson, and I went to Robinson, so we were crosstown rivals. Yeah. I would say it was a fierce rivalry, but they always beat us, so it wasn't that big of a rivalry, at least when I was there. Yeah. Chris is like you. He is a DC basketball personality. I mean, he's been everywhere in the DC circuit. He's been there. But what was Chris like to play with?
Yeah, and he's one of my best friends to this day, and we talk every day.
Great guy.
Yeah, Chris could just fill it up. Chris was a wonderful shooter, and if the 3-point line was back then, he would have played a lot more because he didn't miss. And played many pickup with Chris when we were both coaching together at American. I probably have 2 new knees now, and that's all probably from pickup playing at American U. American U went a little bit cheap when they put in Bender Arena, and they didn't put much padding under the floor, so it went kind of right over cement. And Chris and I played many games there in Bender. Since now it's a raised floor and things have changed a little bit, but back in the early 90s when we were coaching there, things were a little bit different. But Chris was just a flat-out good shooter and a competitor.
Yeah. I will say Bender has aged really well, though. When you go to Bender, it doesn't look like one of these places that like Capital One or these places that have kind of they appear like they're past their better days.
It's Bender still looks the right size, right? I mean, it's the right size arena. I mean, I think when new arenas are coming in play now, they're not going monster facilities anymore, right? Yeah. They're trying to sit 12,000 people. AU sits 3,000 people. It's perfect size for AU.
Yeah, I was over there one day. I watched a soccer game at the soccer field. I walked over and I watched the blue-white scrimmage. It's really well designed. The whole campus is beautiful. So, your sophomore year, you lost in the NIT. Hate to bring this up and rub this in, Gordon, but I believe you lost to an old AU coach, Jim Lyman. Wasn't Jim Lyman at AU?
Oh yeah, Jim Lyman was at AU. So you're right. So my sophomore year, again, we won the regular season. The East Coast Conference back then was loaded. I mean, we played LaSalle, Temple, and St. Joe's during the conference, right? And we won the regular season. We got to and the games were played at the Palestra, which is I coached at the University of Penn. So 5 years I had the key to that building from 85 to 90.
I love the ceiling. The ceiling was great.
Palestra's awesome. But so the games were in Philly. So we play St. Joe's for the championship. Winner goes to the NCAA tournament. Back then, they only took 16, maybe 32 teams. We lose in overtime. We had the ball down one late. I make a little shovel pass to one of our better players, Robin Huey. Had an open jump shot from the foul line. He missed it. We lose the game. We go to the NIT. St. Joe's goes to the NCAA. Wouldn't you know, first round of the NCAA tournament, who do they upset? DePaul.
That's right.
DePaul was ranked like way high in the conference. Right? Clyde Bradshaw and Gary Garland. And
Mark Aguirre.
Yeah. St. Joe's beats them. Yep. And I remember at home just saying that could have been us.
That was the game that Jim Lyman got in trouble because I think he went and kissed his daughter after the game. Yes. Everyone thought it was his mistress or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good call there. Yeah, Jim. Hey, you had Jim Lyman coached at AU. So did Tom Young, the old Rutgers coach, and Old Dominion.
Yeah. So St. Joe's was led by Boo Williams. That's the same Boo Williams of AAU? Boo.
Correct, and that was just a little bit before the teams I'm talking about. Boo was there probably 3 years earlier than that.
That was okay. But
it's the same Boo for sure.
Well, Gordon, something happened your junior year, and you shot 56% from the field. So I was going through your stats. I'm not even sure you remember doing that, But that's an amazing feat, you know. And I've interviewed some UVA guys over the years. I've interviewed like Ricky Stokes and Jeff Jones and
Hmm.
all those guys. And I was always surprised because they always shot a high percentage. And I
Hmm.
always asked them, you know, why'd you shoot so high? Because Terry Holland wouldn't let them shoot very far out. So they always shot great shots. And, you know, they had Ralph Sampson
Yeah.
on the team as well. But what explains 56% from the field? You just tore it up that year.
Yeah, and it was really the first year, my sophomore year. Again, we're rolling, and now I'm playing, right? And so my basically we lose some players. We still finished 21-9, but now I'm like the focal point of the team. And back then, the beauty of it for me was if you could handle the ball and were confident with the basketball, we had all these returning players, and you were in Gary Williams' system. There was no shot clock, right? So I mean, you could get the shot you wanted basically without having to worry about forcing shots. It would have been fun to play today's game with the shot clock, getting the ball with 5 seconds left, knowing I had a launch. Nobody cares if you miss or make. It drives me crazy today, and I'm sure it drives you too. I mean, guys will go 0 for 5 from 3 and then hit one and give you that three-finger thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
like
I hate the three.
five,
I hate the three
five in a
finger
row.
thing.
Yeah, it's missed 5. But yeah, I think that had a lot to do with it. I was just confident. I was now playing 35 minutes a game.
Yeah. Well, you also played with another Northern Virginia legend, Ferd Onion, and
Yes.
he's a Stewart guy now Justice. He's one of these hipster guys that there are certain basketball players in our
Mhm.
history that are just unique.
Yes.
The way he stood, the way he ran, everything about him was just a little different. What was
I'm
Ferd?
I'm impressed. You know that so much about Ferdy. Awesome.
Oh, I'm a huge Northern Virginia fan, and when I was a kid, they had the regional tournaments at Robinson, and I went to Robinson. So I'd walk up, and I'd watch games all day long, and
Awesome.
uh, and he
Yeah.
was he played with you know some of these guys he played with. He played with a guy named Jim Smith, who's now
Yeah.
legendary coach. I forgot some of the other guys.
Yeah. But
Uh,
Beauty of Ferdy, he played at his own pace, right? And that made it look like he was not moving as fast or doing something, but he had a wonderful ball fake. Ferdy could take the ball and pump fake you to death. And that's kind of a lost art today. I mean, and people would bite. And then but he could really fill it up in left-handed. But he was very, very effective and an excellent player. Ferdy and I then ended up playing in many adult leagues together and 35 and older leagues,
yeah,
and we had a blast. So, good
yeah.
times with Ferdy.
I'm pretty sure I played against you guys in Art Jackson's league many years ago.
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, that was a good time. Well, he's a guy that people love talking about him. Just unique. I don't think he took training that seriously. He was just kind of marched to the beat of his own drummer.
You know a lot about Ferdy, spot on. But again, really good friend, wonderful guy, and really good basketball player.
Exactly right. Yeah, it's unique 'cause his type of basketball player doesn't exist anymore. There are these physical specimens that just
Mhm.
launch bombs. They're not these crafty guys that slither
Yeah.
into the lane and get their 15 footers. So I'm sure he would have adjusted to today's game, but we don't think him. Another guy we hadn't talked about was a big time scorer was Mark Nickens, and I'd kind of forgotten about him. But I was
Mhm.
preparing for this interview. He scored a lot of points too. Tell us a little bit about Mark.
Mark was, I mean, a very underrated player. I mean,
He was.
an athlete. I mean, he's the reason why, big reason why we were as good as we were.
Yeah.
I mean, he was something nobody else had. He was small forward, but he could handle. He was strong. He could hit the mid-range jumper, and he was again a tough kid, and from Mackin. And then we had another Mackin kid, Ed Sloan, too,
That's right. That's fun.
was part of that. And then we had another big guy, Juan Jones, who really
Yeah.
developed.
Good player.
Really developed. I think he went to Allegheny Community College and then came to AU, and then he was a force. Juan got real good like his junior and senior year. He would battle Patrick Ewing as good as anybody could.
No, exactly. Yeah, he beat him up a little bit. He wasn't afraid of him, which that was
Yeah,
half the battle. Everybody was so
correct.
afraid of him.
Right.
So
And that was my point about playing against them in the summer. I don't think any of us were afraid of them, right?
right.
We just felt comfortable playing against them.
I forgot to ask you about this. I was reading an article about, and I don't remember this play, but apparently in that Georgetown game when you beat them, you looked over at the bench and you said, "I'm going to take them," and you went down the lane and you hit a floater
Well,
right, Patrick Ewing. Is that really happened? That the way you told me?
it did. I mean, we were up 16, and the next thing you know, basically holding the basketball, and next thing you know, we're up 1. Doing the same thing. So at that point in time, everything's spread out. And let me tell you something, Gene Smith can play defense.
Yeah.
I mean, he was all over me that whole game. And then so I drive the lane. Ewing comes over me. I throw a floater up, kind of hits the back iron, and then goes in. Puts us up 3. Next time down the floor, I do the same thing. And for whatever reason, Ewing decides to try to take a charge on me. Interesting, right? They call a block. He fouls out.
Wow.
And I make the free throws, and then we just held on and we won by 1.
Wow.
So yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah,
Good
maybe
memory.
Maybe
Good
one of
memory.
the biggest. What's that, Gordon? I'm sorry.
That's a wonderful memory, basically.
Oh, great memory. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe still the biggest win in American history, AU history, I would think.
I would think so. A long time ago, 1982.
Yeah. Well, what did you think when you heard that they were going to give Gary Williams his job to a lawyer, a dapper, understated lawyer? So you go from Gary Williams, just enthusiastic. It must.
No. Because Ed Tapscott was our assistant coach the whole time.
That's right.
So Ed was there my freshman, sophomore, and junior year.
Yeah.
And another assistant coach was Fran Dunphy, the legendary Fran Dunphy, who was just now retiring this year from LaSalle, but had a wonderful stint at Penn and
that's right,
and at Temple. So I lobbied for Ed to get that job. Yeah. I remember talking to our AD back then, Bob Fraley, and I was like, "This is the guy we want," and it worked out. We were 20-10 my senior year. He's
had a great career, even post-American. Has a great way about him. He was a lawyer, though. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. I still remember this my freshman year, coming on campus and looking for him. I need to talk to him about something. I went to the law library, and he's got all these books out, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And he ended up getting his law degree, and then he went on to be, basically assistant GM in the Knicks and maybe a president's title. And he was actually coach of the Wiz for 1 year interim basis.
That's right, he was.
And now he's scouting for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And again, he's part of our DC basketball podcast. So I'm with him every week, which is wonderful. Yeah,
it's a great podcast. I'll make sure I'll put the information down for folks who haven't been paying attention. Did Ed? This is his first time as a head coach, I assume.
Yes.
Did he change things a lot? Did he know what he wanted to do as a head coach?
Yeah, and again back then, we had everybody returning after my junior year. So, he's going to keep Gary's system in place, right? We knew that very well. So there really wasn't much he had to do. I think he had to do a lot of coaching after we left. And I think the biggest thing he probably learned that first year is just to be yourself, right? He was comes assistant to be a head coach. He's friends with us, and now he's taking control. So that's never an easy job. And Chris Knoche was also, so when Ed Tapscott got the head coach, Fran Dunphy and Chris Knoche were assistants.
Okay. So you had some continuity there. Yes. And I know it's important for upperclassmen not to have a lot of change when you're getting ready, getting ready. So that must be good. Well, you had a good year. You were 20-10, 7-3 in the conference. You led the team in minutes played. It's interesting because it looks like you shot a lot less your senior year.
I did. I can still hear my dad, God rest his soul, telling me, shoot more, But my assist total went way up that year. For whatever reason, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have shot the ball more. But I was getting other people involved, and I was a big year in assists for me.
Yeah. So it wasn't a conscious thing for Ed to change your role.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Well, so what does it mean to be? People nowadays won't even know what I'm talking about. But you were 8th round draft choice in the NBA, and I kind of remember those days. Mm-hmm. And even though there were stories of 4th rounders and 6th rounders making it, so there was always a shot. What did it mean back then to be 8th round draft?
Well, it was who I got drafted by, the Philadelphia 76ers, and they had won it all the year before. So there was no room for anybody really to make the team. And the guy who made it was like Sidell III, who was just
great,
hard defender, and just he lasted in the league for a little while. But my biggest accomplishment there was I made it through the first cuts. So I got to at least go to where everybody was there. I got to, play against Dr. J and, all those guys. Think about the backcourt they had there. They had Andrew Toney, right? Mm-hmm. Cheeks, Franklin Edwards, Clint Richardson. Who's going to, hard to break in with those guys. But, it was experience. And next thing you know, I have CBA has my rights. So I was going to, it was Lancaster Lightning had it. And it was Cazzie Russell was the coach.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I was, back then, overseas, they only wanted one American to play. And generally that American, they wanted him to be 6'10", right? They didn't want a 5'11" American on the team. So, I was on the bus ride going to Lancaster, and I said, this is not for me. Buddies from Jersey picked me up and got into coaching from there, coached up till 1997.
Yeah. So do you think in some ways it's a good thing that there's not, an infinite number of opportunities to play, that you had to go on with your life, get the coaching, get into business.
Hmm.
Nowadays, there's always a place where you can play. If you're a good player, you can play a little
Yeah,
bit. It may prolong
yeah.
you starting a career that's gonna sustain you.
Right. But also, I mean, it would probably be a fun 2 or 3 years though, playing
Yeah.
somewhere overseas, the learning experience, and I think I would rather have taken that and done that, and had some fun and enjoyed basketball a little couple more years. Because
Mhm.
once thing when basketball is over, it's like it's reality sits in.
Yeah, it's tough. Even I remember my last game. I played. We lost in a district tournament, and I knew
Mm-hmm.
it was my last game. I played a little bit of JV at UVA,
Mm-hmm.
but the feeling when your career is over, it is
Yes.
even a high school career.
Mm-hmm.
So much we're defined by our basketball. We have so many memories, so many
Mm-hmm.
relationships, so many things in life I do today is because of relationships I made from high school basketball, the coaches, or even in college pickup basketball or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And when the day when your organized career is over, uh, you do learn there's great adult leagues. There's so many other ways. I was a
Yeah.
referee, you coach. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
ways to enjoy the game, but at the time, it feels like life's kind of coming to an end.
Absolutely, you hit that nail on the head, spot on. And I think that's for me. I've basically been out of the game since 1997. I've been watching and everything, but now the last 3 years, I'm back involved with American Youth. Right, I'm going to the games, going to a couple practices. It's just enjoyably back involved.
Did you like coaching?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. Part of me wish I would have stayed in and had the opportunity to be a head coach one day. But we got released at American after my 97. And Gary Williams had offered me assistant job at Maryland. It was very nice of him. But at that time, Billy Hahn was going to leave and take the head job at Towson. Billy then turned the Towson State job down after he got offered. So now that wasn't an opportunity for me to be at Maryland at that point. And then insurance world, there was an opening. I took the job thinking I would go back into coaching, but everything worked out well. So here I am today, still doing, and now I'm back. It's nice.
Yeah. How was your celebrity? And again, it was a different kind of celebrity back then, but you were a guy who anyone in the basketball scene knew really well. You're being the
Yeah.
Washington Post all the time. How has your celebrity helped your insurance business?
And Julian, I appreciate you saying that because the guy from Jersey, not a local guy,
Oh,
and to make an impact was, much
oh,
appreciative. And
oh, you're
I'm always
welcome. Yeah.
thankful for that. But, I'd say in the insurance world, it's helped it somewhat. I built a good community of friends and it's all about referral business. And so it's gone really well for me. Insurance is not an easy, again, I'm doing property and casualty mainly, right? People have to have that. So, it's a nice niche and I did it. But in today's insurance world, it would be very hard to start off because there's too many options out there. There's too much internet. There's too much else going on. Just like kind of in basketball, you're exposed with the media. It's the same exact way.
Someone fills out like a
Yeah,
questionnaire online and they already have a rep calling them. And so it's not that personal touch
that
of
that, that
relationships that
was when I first started. Correct.
exactly.
Yeah.
We bash the insurance industry a lot now. Do you think a lot of it's unfair?
I mean, nobody calls my office now and they're happy, right? They're all complaining about rates. Everybody's rates are going up, and
Yeah.
for the first time, truthfully, in a long time, insurance companies are losing money from
Yeah.
whether it's from the fires, the hurricanes. So there, a couple companies have cut back. They won't even write new business now. So
Yeah.
it's nobody's rates, and and in life, once rates are raised, they're never going back down again.
Yeah.
You're hoping they just stay stable at where they are. But
Exactly.
so it's pretty much. I think it's fair.
Is insurance it's kind of business where it's kind of like selling whole life or whatever. Most 90% fail the first 2 or 3 years, but if you hang in there, put your head down, and you get established, you can build some annuities up and and have a pretty solid
Yeah,
income that lasts over time. Is that how it works?
yeah, and that's very true, right? And that's kind of where in my world I'm doing more commercial, homes and auto. People have to have that, right? I never want to push life insurance on people. If people want it, I get referrals, they come to me, I'll do it. But if I just had to sell life insurance for a living, it'd be very hard. It'd be something I wouldn't want to do and wouldn't enjoy doing. Because again, though people should have it, they don't have to have it. And I never want to force anything on anybody.
Yeah. I'm in sales, Gordon. I sell law firms, litigation support and stuff.
Mhm.
And I feel like I'm always telling them things they don't want. And, and
Mhm.
it's so much nicer when they really need you. It's
Yes, yes, it is.
really helping
Yes,
someone. Because a lot of times they think you feel you're just a commodity and
correct, correct.
they're doing you a favor.
Mhm.
And my company's great and I think we do great work, but you have
Mhm.
to kind of, you got to
Mhm.
kind of, you know, establish that. So, well, when you got back into broadcasting,
Mhm.
was that an adjustment? I mean,
Mhm. Yeah,
being in the insurance business, being a
yeah.
coach,
Mhm.
obviously you're a great
Mhm.
communicator. But was that an adjustment getting on talking about games after kind of being away from it for a while?
You know, it was in the fact it's I think if you get nervous, it's all about the pregame, right? You want to make sure you study pregame, but once the game actually starts, to me it flows naturally, right? You see what's going on. I have a wonderful play-by-play guy, Dan Lang, who really sets me up well, and we have a good camaraderie together. And then I always go with the thought of it's ESPN Plus, right? Wonderful network. It's streaming. American U basketball. Who's really watching, right? I mean, it's alumni, right? Parents. So it's nice. I mean, it's not like there's a lot of pressure on you to actually come through, and then which, in my mind, leads you to be natural, be yourself, and things work out.
Yeah, you guys do a great job. Now, as part of your job, you have to build a relationship with the players and the coach. You want to have some insight that maybe we don't know about, or do you try to stay a little bit beyond the fray? It's just kind of an
Yeah,
impartial observer.
yeah. I have a wonderful relationship with Dwayne, Coach Simpkins. And that's kind of where I'm at with him. The players wise, I'm happy to say hello to them and do things, but I don't. I really don't get involved too much with being friends with them on Twitter and the other options there. I mean, and again, nobody roots harder for American U than I do.
Yeah.
I'm a homer, but not over the top. And you got to call it as you see it, and that's the way I am. But yeah, I'm not close with the players, but clearly, I like all of them.
Yeah. Well, let's end with this year's American team. We talked a little bit about Greg Jones. We talked a little bit about Simpkins. Now, I remember when Simpkins got the job. I really liked Brennan a lot. I was
Yes.
disappointed that he didn't stay on because he's just
Mm-hmm.
a good guy. I mean,
Yep.
I'd see him at local games, and
Yeah, he's a good guy.
he's a really good guy. So
And
you
and
want to,
and, and his offense would lead me to have my assist record forever, right? The old Princeton style. There's no league guard
oh
more
yeah,
assist. So, I mean, I was always happy with Coach
yeah,
Brennan
you were
running
cheering for him.
Princeton. he's,
Yeah, yeah, he's just a good guy.
he is a very good guy.
I
And
was
I think
very disappointed. I was very disappointed when he didn't stay on.
mhm.
And then, Simpkins was a tremendous player. I don't think people remember how good a player he was. There was two Simpkins. I think that's kind of confusing in the
Mhm.
area.
Yep.
Dwayne
And we
was,
both played for Gary, right? He's a point guard for Gary Williams in Maryland. I was for American, so we have that in common for
oh, that's
sure.
right. You both played.
Yeah, yeah,
And he finally got his chance. There were two jobs available that offseason, the George Mason job
mhm,
and the American job. And it was
yeah.
unclear, which job. I think we felt like he was going to get one of those jobs. And I actually thought he was going to get the Mason job because I think he'd been assistant there. So I was actually surprised when the American
Mhm.
job was the one that worked out. Um, what did you think about Coach? I remember when he got the job, he immediately grew into the job like he'd been there forever. Like he had this big, strong personality. And
Mhm.
I guess, he was an older guy. He wasn't like a 30-year-old who was getting the job for the first time. He seemed like he was ready to be a head coach.
He sure was. He paid his dues as an assistant, right? And then I think it was him and maybe Tony Skinn, right? Were
Yeah.
both assistants, and Skinn got the job. He got the American job. American's lucky. Dwayne took the job and got the job. Players love him. I mean, he's all in. I mean, there's camaraderie. They're together. And again, like I was telling you earlier, he plays 11 guys in the first half. Who's not to like that? They're ready to play in the second half. Early on, when he took the job, and again, he's had Coach Brennan's players for the most part, right? He has 3 5-year players, grad students,
Yeah.
Colin Smalls, Lincoln Ball, and Player of the Year Matt Rogers preseason. He'll be Player of the Year. Matt Rogers will be. So he's got all those 3 guys leaving, but he's done a nice job bringing in his own players his freshman year, and then he's got this kind of Matt Mayock and Greg Jones have been terrific. Future's bright at AU, and and again, Americans in the right conference, Patriot League.
It is.
Back when Chris Knoche and I were coaching, we were in the CAA, and it was really tough to compete against Richmond, Old Dominion, VCU. Those were some tough teams that we had to play in that conference. But now AU is one of the better teams, at least on an equal level with the rest of the Patriot League teams.
Oh, I used to love it. You came out and played George Mason, Joe Harrington's
Yeah,
team,
yes,
Carlos Yates, and those
yeah.
guys. Those are great games. But it was hard to sustain that level with the amount of money going into
Yeah.
to those programs. What do you think? What did Simpkins do? I would have thought Matt Rogers would be worth so much money to maybe, if not power four, right below that level.
Mhm.
And I was really surprised that he came back. I was, because not that American's a great program, it's a great school,
And there's
but
no
if
money involved. Nobody's paying Matt Rogers, right? So,
yeah, I
and they
was,
lost a player 2 years ago, Dwayne's first year, Johnny O'Neill,
yeah,
who
Johnny, yeah,
went to
very similar.
Santa Clara, went to Santa Clara.
Yeah, very
Right?
similar.
And he's been starting for Santa Clara ever since. But I think Matt loves American U. I mean, that's the bottom line. He enjoys being there, getting his degree, and family, wonderful people. So I think that's the big sell right there is American U from Matt Rogers.
Yeah, and I think Matt did the program a service by
Mhm.
staying and being loyal. Others see that as well. If Matt Rogers stayed here,
Mhm.
it kind of is a cultural thing. I think, and I
Mhm.
don't want to take credit away from Simpkins, because
No,
I'm
no.
sure a lot of this is to do with him. But by
Yeah,
him doing that, that helps the whole program.
yeah, and I think it is a credit to Dwayne keeping these guys in the program. The first year Dwayne got the job, they went overseas, and I think before the season even started, I think it was in August, right? And I think that was a wonderful thing for them. Parents went, everybody went, and they got to see Dwayne as the type of guy Dwayne is. He's tough not to like. He's a wonderful human being. So I think that helped build the program.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, the only people we hadn't talked about on American are the guards, and I think they're both terrific guards. Elijah Stevens, who's very much a playmaker, started out the season on fire from outside, but his playmaking's been great throughout. Sprouse is a knockdown shooter. I don't think he's shot quite as well as he has in the past, but I think he's had some injury. He's had some knocks this year, and that can hurt any shooter. Tell us a little bit about those two
Yeah,
guys.
you're right on Sprouse. Sprouse can catch and shoot with anybody. He's got a quick release, but he's missed, 10, 12 games this year. He's, had a spurt where he missed 4 games and then he's missed 6. He's just getting back into rhythm now. But he's a legit man coming off the bench who can just knock down threes. Elijah had some injury problems himself. He had a little nose issue where he had to wear a mask for a while. It's never easy to play with a mask on. But probably the last 4 or 5 games, the mask has been off and he's really been playing better. But really, he's obviously Matt Rogers is going to be player of the year in the conference, but Elijah Stevens is the key to that team making the NCAA tournament. I hate to put that pressure on Elijah, but he's their lead guard, he's their playmaker, and as Elijah goes, the team goes.
Yeah. Well, Gordon, this has been great, man. I'm glad you agreed to do this. I did want to ask you one last question. You've accomplished a lot in basketball. So you've coached. You didn't become a head coach like you probably would have if you would have stayed with it. Definitely had a great career, won some big games. You're a young looking guy, but you got to be a couple years older than me. Is there anything anything left for you to accomplish in basketball? I mean, you have a great podcast where you can just yuck it up. You guys would be doing that even if it wasn't a podcast. You'd be at some pub doing that anyway.
Yeah.
But but it's very popular. Is there anything left that you want to accomplish in basketball?
I don't think so, Julian. If something else falls my way, yes. I wouldn't mind, broadcasting. I'm enjoying it very much. Part of me a lot of times see stuff's on the floor. I'd love to go out there and teach just a little minor things to players, tweaking them, I would love to have Greg Jones for like 30 minutes, at some time. Those little things are always in us, right? We want to do it. But right now I'm happy where I am.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're lucky to have you, Gordon, and I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're
Thank
busy.
you too.
Yeah, this is great. Next time I go to a game, I'll come by and try to meet you in person. I know there's busy times, but I'll give it a shot.
Please do. I appreciate all you're doing.
Oh, well, thanks for saying that, Gordon. Again, have a great day.
You too.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Bye. Take care.